Hey, what's happening? Welcome to the Pleasure Points podcast. I'm your host, James Rohr. I'm so happy that you're here. I am a love and dating coach and acupuncturist, dude trying to just have a good time and help people feel good. Today's episode is an interesting one. I deviated from what I normally do, doing a solo episode today, and it in many ways is the most vulnerable episode that I've ever done. So I hope that you are able to listen to it with open ears, open eyes, and are willing to give me some feedback. Reach out to me, let me know what you think of this. If it's more of the stuff that you want to hear, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, you have feedback, if you had your own experiences. I'm going to be talking about channeling and just kind of open yourself up to some larger energies. So you can find me at pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram at James E. Rohr. If you're interested in my dating and relationship work, you can check out what I've got going on invitinginlove.com. And yeah, I'm just really humbled to have you guys here checking it out, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Channeling, if you don't know what that is, channeling seems to be, I don't know what the definition of it is, but from my experience, what I've read about it is basically it's people who put themselves into some kind of a trance or have a special connection and are able to access guardian angels, spirit guides, possibly aliens, people that may have lived before. It depends on the book that you're reading and what was channeled. Two of my favorite books that come to mind are the products of of being channeled. That's The Conversations with God. Totally love that book. And Abraham Hicks' Ask and It Is Given. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ones. I think Teresa Avila, her stuff was channeled. A lot of people say that their stuff is channeled. I've been also reading this crazy book. I think it's called Messages of Ra, where this community, this couple of people were channeling supposedly the entities that built the pyramids. So if you're into that sort of thing, that book is kind of dense and bonkers and interesting. So the experience that I've had when I've read these books, when I've read especially Conversations with God and the Abraham Hicks one, is it's almost an immediate state change. So when I'm reading the words, I can feel this very visceral reaction in my body. My shoulders relax. My eyes seem to get wider and brighter. Everything just starts to feel like I'm in a state of flow. And the other thing that's happened to me when I've read these books is the entire time that I'm reading it, especially when I'm reading about, like when I first read about how Abraham Hicks got involved with channeling, I just get overwhelmed with this feeling of like, I can do that. I need to be doing that. This is the work that I'm here to do, is to channel. But I've always been kind of afraid of admitting that, and certainly of doing it, because there seems to be this energy of being overtaken or kind of overwhelmed by the energy that comes through. And to completely surrender to all of that may be something that I just haven't really been willing to do. I've shared some stories here on the podcast of sensing energies or seeing ghosts, or I don't even know what to call it. Stuff that's been verified, by the people that I'm connecting with and whatever. And, I try to approach it very realistically. Like, I don't know what it is. This is an experience that's happening to me. I don't like putting words on it or terms to it or labels, because it reminds me of like the Tao, it's like the Tao that has a name is no longer the Tao. And so I don't know what it is, but it feels to me, and I know we can't trust feelings all the time, but it feels to me like being connected or being able to see beyond, the veil, as though things that are usually hidden in this world become visible for a moment or a few moments or many moments. And so, here we are. And this podcast is in some way just kind of an extension of me trying to figure it out and to share with you guys stories, to interview people and get more insights. I've talked a lot lately and interviewed a lot of people about meditation and mindfulness and just paying attention. And that's all I'm really trying to do. And sometimes what I seem to have paid attention to is like pretty cool. It's fun. It's interesting. And so I want to share this because, I want to get off of my computer and just kind of out there, because it's not serving anybody if it's just sitting here and publishing and all that stuff. I mean, who knows, what that looks like. So we'll just kind of throw it out there. If you have experience channeling, if you've had experience with this, I'd love to hear about it. Send me a message at pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com and let me know about it. I'm probably not using the terms properly because, again, I don't even like to get too locked into that. I don't even read about, the difference between like psychics and intuitives and mediums and channels and all that shit. All I know is I just try to connect with my heart and do things that are of service, that make, a positive impact. And the positive impact that I tend to care the most about is like my own well-being. Because if I'm not taking care of myself, I don't have anything to give anybody else. So anyway, what I want to do here is share with you something that came through one day. Now, so what was happening was that I had been kept feeling like I needed to do this work, to do this channel. I started, I don't know, 15 years ago, maybe not that long, probably 15 years ago. I was about 25. And I just was overcome with this feeling of like, I need to start writing. I need to write a book. And I was like, I'm 25. I don't know shit about anything. Why do I need to write a book? What am I even going to talk about? And I just kept hearing this voice that was like, don't worry about it. Just sit down and we'll start writing. And so I started doing that. I changed my work schedule. I stopped working on Fridays, and I would spend basically 3 days, Thursday night through the weekend, as much as I could. I would just write. And in that experience, what I noticed was that there were two very different tones of the writing. There was the writing that was forced, where I thought I had something to say and I was trying to say it. And then there was the writing that was something else that just flowed. And in that flow, it can feel as though there's this kind of, to me, it felt like there was this connection to something else. Did I access another part of my brain? Was there other energy coming in? I don't know. And I don't even know that I care. But what I appreciated was the ease with which it happened. And I didn't end up doing anything with that particular book. I mean, I've modified some stuff and it became part of Unlearning Stress. But Unlearning Stress, which is the only book I've actually published, is kind of a watered down. It's like a really introductory. It's a great book for an introduction to like, where do you begin when you're looking to incorporate mindfulness into your life? What are some of the things to consider to begin creating new building blocks for where to be? And a lot of the stuff that I was writing in this first phase was a little bit more in depth, a little bit more complicated. It just didn't work with what I was trying to do with Unlearning Stress. And then that stuff is really just, it has sat on my computer, kind of collecting the proverbial dust. But in the last year, what happened was I read Conversations with God a few years ago, and then more recently I read the Abraham Hicks book, Ask and It Is Given. And while I was reading that, she had great things to say. They had great stuff. It was I found it very fascinating. But the thing that struck me the most was this urge that I had inside of me to start channeling, was to start to finally surrender and allow this other energy to come in. And again, I don't know if what happens there is, am I really connecting with other entities? Was there something that was, some spirit that lived in another world that came down to sit with me in the kitchen and have a conversation with me? Or was this just a convenient mental construct for my brain to give me permission to be more free so that I could write without hindrance? And by saying that it was a message coming from somebody else, somehow that makes it more palatable. It's giving myself more permission. It's more free. Maybe I'll pay more attention to it. I don't know. I've written enough now, I think, to understand or to be able to identify a couple of different states. One is obviously when I'm forcing it. One is when it's flowing pretty well. It feels like it's generated from me. It's not being forced. I'm saying what I want to say. Another one is when I'm feeling inspired. There's another type of energy that's flowing through me. And what I'm about to share with you is a whole different category. And this is where I literally felt as though I was having a conversation. So what happened was I was sitting in my kitchen in front of my computer. It was like a Saturday afternoon. I had been reading that Abraham Hicks book. And finally I was just like, you know what? Just fucking do it already, Jim. Just flip the switch and see what happens. And as soon as I did that, I don't know how to, I wish I could tell you what I did. I don't know, except that I tuned in and I said, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's do this. And as soon as I did that, I felt like two entities showed up in my kitchen, sitting across the table from me. And it was super cool because it was similar to when I had felt the spirits of other people that have passed, where I got some information that was verified. And so, I don't think I'm like totally delusional here. Maybe I am, but like, I don't need to be put in an institution. And all of a sudden, it's like these two entities were here. And they start talking to me. And all I'm doing is transcribing what they're saying. And they were talking about love. And so what I think I'm going to do here is I'm just going to read to you some sections of what they told me to share with the people. And I don't even know if I'm going to get into analysis afterwards. It kind of stands on its own. So bear with me if it sounds like I'm reading, because I am. This stuff, it didn't come from me. So if I can't even take credit for it, I don't want it to be like, oh, I channeled like this amazing thing. I'm going to look at me, I'm a channel. Like, it's not really about that. But I felt like they were showing me, they were sharing some insights into love and some things that we think about that if you've been listening to this podcast, I think you might find helpful. So here we go. So they show up and then they say, hello, Jim. We're here to use you as a channel for a book about love. This is the thing that drives the world, the search for love, for the creation of it, and the loss of it creates so much suffering and despair. The people are hurting, and that's because they do not fully understand what it is that's motivating them. Love is a force that permeates all things. The so-called emptiness that you think is air is actually love. And no one can attract love, and you can't repel it. Love just is. It's that simple. But as you teach, the awareness of this love is of utmost importance. And doing the inner work to awaken one's awareness of the love that permeates all things is the single most important work to be done. There's an idea that has infiltrated your culture in this time and age, and that relates to trauma. People are attached to the idea that trauma prevents you from seeing love. But it is precisely because of love that trauma happens. When trauma occurs, this gives one the chance to reawaken to the power of love. Those who have never experienced trauma before are those who have more work to do to discover the power of love. Those of you who have the most trauma are the most beloved and are given the greatest opportunity to express love so powerfully. This is why we made you sick. This is why in the repairing of your physical body, in returning of your awareness to your wholeness, you're able to do the work that you do. Without that illness, you would have never experienced the grace of our love, nor turned your attention so inwardly as to see the outward expression of love. It's the attachment to love as a thing that creates problems. The stones in the river aren't attached to the water that flows all around it. They let it flow. And yes, the water does erode, but the stone isn't bothered by that. The stone surrenders part of its flesh to the flow of the stream, knowing that downstream it will be deposited as silt and sand, and that plays an important part in the entire ecosystem. So it goes with love, where you give part of yourself, eventually all of yourself. But what happens in return from the love that you give and what love takes from you contributes to the flow and the health of the whole. Clinging to a desire for love to be a particular thing all of the time, just in the right way for you, betrays love's true essence. All things must flow, love especially, and to hold on to it, hoping for permanence, creates disease. This is why you're so drawn to Chinese medicine and why we've led you to the Tao. Because the flow there is everything. An ecosystem where nothing moves isn't really an ecosystem. It's a death trap. It's a stagnant pond. The question that needs to be asked at marriages and commitment ceremonies is not, do you love this person? But rather, are you willing to grow, flow, adapt, and surrender parts of your flesh and spirit for this person? If you're not willing to give all of yourself, like the stone gives itself to the river, then you're not a fit for marriage. A stone does not sit in the river and hope not to be changed by the river. The stone is in the river to be a stone in the river, to feel the rushing of the current, to sense the changing of the tides as storms come up and go, as waves crash and abate, for the experience of being a stone in a river. They sacrifice themselves, but the stories they tell are more of movement than a stone on the dry shore. Your culture uses diamonds now to symbolize love. This is fitting, as diamonds are great enhancers of energy. Wearing them on what you call the ring finger goes to the Chinese meridian of the Sanjiao, the triple burner, which guards the water passages. It is a reminder that love should flow, that the diamond enhances that which moves, and that the awareness of movement and identifying stagnation is of utmost importance for your unions. A couple that allows feelings and words to touch, that allows words and touch to flow freely, is a couple where the awareness of love stays constantly regenerated. Love is always there. You cannot undo it, nor can you create it, but you can allow for it to flow. You can allow it to rejuvenate you. You can allow it to bathe you. Put your mind to the flow of love and watch what happens. And let's talk about attachment again, because this is a big thing now. You speak of anxious, secure, and avoidant attachment types. But there is really only one kind of attachment and one kind of imbalance. You are either aware that you and everything around you is love, or you aren't. The more you can embrace uncertainty and how that love appears for you, the more of the flow state you can resume. And then they ask kind of a rhetorical question here of, why don't people want to think of love as an erosive force? Because of your desire for self-preservation. But you don't realize that what you consider to be you is simply cells on loan. You have your body for just a short period of time, but the earth and the multiverse has it forever. The matter will always exist. People would have more joy and less suffering if they held on to themselves less and gave more freely. Again, the stone in the river analogy. Holding on to you is contrary to the fundamental flow of this life. If we had wanted you to live forever, then you would have. And self-preservation might be more relevant. But the time is ephemeral. So the question becomes, how much of yourself are you willing to give to love? When a rock is in the river, when it allows the water to flow over it, the erosion is gentle, subtle, and takes hundreds of thousands of years. But when there is great resistance or stormy waters, the impact increases, the turbulence quickens, and the rock is more likely to be split, shattered, eroded, and compromised. You are both the rock and you control the current of the river of love. When one has a mind of love all the time and a non-attachment to what one believes they are entitled to, waters stay smooth, consistent, healthy, and flowing. But as we've brought you teachers to remind you, demanding, complaining, sticking up for your rights to have smooth waters creates the turbulence. But even then, what is lost of the self and identity in that turbulence is a gift back to the larger ecosystem. You can regain full vitality, full resolution of the self even after, and it won't matter. We don't need you to be unchanged and powerful. There is just always an opportunity to return to flow, to return your awareness to the sacredness of everything, even if all that remains of your consciousness from your original stone is a speck of dust. You will be both that speck of dust and all of creation at once. The attachment to outcomes, to order, to the specific way, is what betrays love. You think about conditional and unconditional love. This is an interesting thing your words can do. The love you feel is conditional to your existence as a human. It is conditional upon the heart that beats, the air that is breathed, the food that is consumed, and how that food is consumed. Yes, the how food is consumed is more important than what is consumed, but we can talk more about that later. Everything in your life is conditional. What is this striving for unconditionality? To love more, to love healthily, condition yourself to be without attachment. Condition yourself to allow the waters to flow around you and inside you. Thinking about what you will get from it is not the best question. The stone doesn't ask what the water will bring. We told you that love will erode you in all the best ways. It can erode the sharp corners. It can erode the disbelief. It can erode your doubt. It can erode the blindfold so many of you wear. Know that love will erode, and you can embrace the dying to celebrate the glow of your shining light. To be unconditionally loving is simply a choice to condition yourself daily, to allow the love light to flow. You can't love unconditionally. You just are conditionally in your body. The love is there, has been there, is always there. Are you conditioning yourself to see what is there instead of what isn't? The failed expectations, the hurt, the deceit, the betrayal that so often binds people up. Great, do that work. Make that commitment. But don't exalt yourself to a place of being unconditional as a way of being superior to others. Just be in the river of love, and everything else gets sorted out. So, there you have it. That was just the first part of a whole bunch of stuff that came through. If you're into it, if you like it, hit me up on Instagram at James E. Rohr. Send me an email, pleasurepointspodcast@gmail.com. Let me know what you think. I'm happy to share with you guys more of what came through. There was some really amazing stuff. They dived deeper into trauma. They talked a lot about sacred geometry and, use of acupuncture points and some stuff. And it's cool. And I know that, at least for me, even rereading this, some of it sounds like, yeah, okay, it's just kind of the same shit that we hear about love all the time. But the stuff about trauma, and in particular the imagery of the river and the stone in the river, was something that I've never consciously thought about before. Really liked it. It resonates well with me, and it just gets deeper and deeper from there. So if you're into it, hit me up, let me know, and I'm happy to pop on again, and maybe we'll just kind of do this as an ongoing sort of storybook opportunity in between the interviews that are happening here. So let me know what you think. Love freely, give of yourself. Let's not be so concerned about our self-preservation. Yeah, fuck, I don't know. I'm going to listen to this stuff again and keep reading it. Try to listen with my whole body, and we'll just see where all this goes. So if you are single and you're looking for help, I am doing relationship and dating coaching. Check out invitinginlove.com. What I talk about there may not be quite as smooth sounding as what came through here, but I am committed to looking at everything that we can, to staying awake and alert to love, identifying places in my life and helping people see in their lives where that love might be lurking, so that we can all restore that healthy flow in and around, and that we can attract that loving partner that we can grow with. So thank you, as always, for being here and supporting the podcast. If you like what's going on here, please write a review, rate it, share it with your people. All that helps spread the word. And I just am so blessed to have you join me here. Have a great day, and I'll catch you guys next time.